What is going on? It is Nate the Game Guy coming back with another video at hand, and today I want to talk about problems when collecting for the Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 is one of my favorite game consoles of all time. I love its library. I just have had so many great memories with the Nintendo 64. But just like every other system, it's not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to collecting for the 64. In this video, I'm going to be talking about a few pet peeves of mine, along with a few other problems that you will encounter when collecting for the Nintendo 64. So without further ado, let's jump right into this video's topic right after the intro. So the first problem when talking about collecting for the Nintendo 64 are the center joysticks on the controller itself. The Nintendo 64 is one of those controllers that you're either going to love or you hate. Me personally, I love the 64 controller, but I'll admit I'm a little biased because the 64 was one of my first game consoles growing up. But I will say when it comes to things to complain about with the 64, it is the center joystick of the controller. Unfortunately, it is very prone to drift and very prone to eventually just stop working altogether, and it's just not a fun experience to deal with. You'll see a lot of times online when you are looking for a pre-owned Nintendo 64 controller that is authentic, that it can be pretty pricey, is because after all, it is a very common issue, and finding a controller that doesn't have those problems is kind of rare in a way. But anyway, there are ways to fix and replace the joystick of the Nintendo 64 controller, but I'm not going to talk about how you do so in this video because there's already a ton of content out there that talk about just that. But I will say that is something that you should be aware of when collecting for the Nintendo 64, that is something that you will come across. One of my recommendations that I will say to help you somewhat avoid that problem is if you want to collect the original hardware, I also recommend keeping a third-party Nintendo 64 controller around, so that way if you are going to use something that's pretty intensive on the joystick, such as the original Smash Brothers, you don't have to worry about getting the drift as much because after all, it'll only be a third-party controller and you will be able to keep your first-party controller intact. But yes, that is a problem that is worth noting when collecting for the Nintendo 64. Now, one problem that is worth noting when collecting for the Nintendo 64 are reproduction carts. Reproduction carts are exactly what it sounds like. They are essentially carts just like the original cartridges for the Nintendo 64, and they will have the ROM of the game put on there, and a lot of times they are a lot less expensive than buying the authentic copy. And if for whatever reason you just want to play on the original Nintendo 64 hardware, but you just don't really care if the game is authentic or not, it can be a great solution for those that want to save some money. However, it can be a massive headache for collectors because a lot of times the reproduction carts will look so similar to the authentic carts that unless if you know the really fine details, it's very difficult to tell the difference between the carts. My recommendation in avoiding reproduction carts is going on, when you're going on eBay or whatever, right? Make sure that you're buying from a seller that's showing the actual footage and the actual photos of the actual game itself instead of some stock image, because a lot of times those stock images, there's a very good chance that they can be repro carts, and a lot of times you'll see a lot too when searching online. If you see a cartridge only but it'll say that the condition is new, it's very likely that it's a repro cart. But I will say, if it's something that you don't really care about but just want to play on the original hardware, not really a big issue, and it can be quite cost effective. So it is one of those things of, well, you just gotta pick your poison to see which works best for you when collecting for the 64. Now, of course, being a cartridge-oriented game console, I have to talk about the boxes that the games originally came in. These boxes were not meant to be cases for the games to put in. Like, once you would take a game out of your game console or whatever, they were not meant to be like VHS sleeves where you would just pop them back in the box, you're good to go and you just store them, right? Unfortunately, for those that want to collect complete in box for the Nintendo 64, will have a relatively uphill battle, not just in terms of prices, but also because that these boxes that these games originally came in were not really built for durability. They a lot of times will get creasing over time when you use them and open them back up. A lot of times that they'll not really be that great when they fall off of the shelf. They're not really great things to keep your cartridges in for long-term storage and durability. If you want to watch my video on where I talk a little more in depth about this exact problem, not just with collecting for the Nintendo 64, but also other cartridge-based game consoles, I'll be linking a video somewhere for you guys to watch where I basically talk about the pros and cons of collecting complete in box and collecting games loose. I talk a lot about that subject there, so I really do recommend that you guys check it out. But I will say, when it comes to collecting for the Nintendo 64, that is a big minus when it comes to collecting, is because those boxes are not fun to collect for, because like I said, they're not built for durability, they're not great for long-term storage. But if you are someone who wants to collect complete in box anyway, it is something that you should be aware of. Now, of course, collecting complete in box also comes with its host of other problems as well, and that is the high prices of collecting complete in box. The Nintendo 64 is not a cheap game console to collect for if you're someone who wants to collect complete in box. If you're someone that just cares about having the cart and that's about it, you know, it's going to be a lot easier to collect for when it comes to the Nintendo 64. I'm sure you guys have seen already that I have both loose copies and complete in box copies when it comes to the Nintendo 64. That's because I used to collect complete in box at one point, but then I decided to switch over to cart only. Again, I'm not going to go into my entire story as to why I decided to make that change. I already linked the video where I talk about why you should collect games or should not collect games complete in box or loose. So go ahead and have a watch there with that. But yeah, when it comes to collecting for the Nintendo 64, it can be a bit of a turnoff when it comes to collectors that only want to collect complete in box. I mean, a lot of these games can easily be a $100 difference when it comes to collecting complete in box. Also, as mentioned from the other problems from before, these boxes are not meant for durability. It's just not a fun game console to collect for complete in box. Then again, you could say the same thing with also NES and Super Nintendo as well. But yeah, when it comes to collecting complete in box, I would say that can be quite a bit of a headache for collectors out there. Now, it is without a doubt that Nintendo 64 is a classic game console that a lot of collectors enjoy collecting for, me, myself included, right? It's a great console. However, when it comes to being a great console that is getting up there in age, along with its library as well, we have to talk about the game saves and the batteries inside of the games. Games such as Ocarina of Time have batteries inside of them that essentially keep your game save alive for when you pop your game in the next time. You will be able to pick up to where you left off from before. Unfortunately, since these games are getting really up there in age now at this point, these batteries are beginning to die off. Now, I'm not saying that is a turnoff when it comes to collecting. That isn't something that bothers me personally, because there are solutions to this. But I will say that is something to be aware of when it comes to game saves and all that stuff. A few things that you should keep in mind. If you are searching for Nintendo 64 games to purchase, and if that's something that you really care about, you know, you may want to be able to look online, like on a website such as eBay, and make sure to see if the seller, you know, opened up the cart and replaced the batteries inside and soldered them back in. And of course, if you want to be able to learn to do that yourself, which I strongly recommend that a lot of you guys do, I would recommend learning some soldering skills to where you can desolder the original battery inside, pop a new battery in, and then your game is good for another 10, 20, maybe 30 years, and you don't have to worry about the game saves at all. But yes, that is a problem that can occur and will occur when it comes to collecting for the Nintendo 64. That is something that you guys should definitely be aware of. Alright, and that is going to conclude my video for problems when collecting for the Nintendo 64. What do you guys think of the video? Did you find it entertaining, informative, any of that good stuff? Feel free to comment in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Give this video a like if you enjoyed, because it will help boost it up into the YouTube algorithm so more viewers such as you can find videos just like this. Of course, please do consider subscribing, because I do post a lot of content when it comes to game collecting tips, other video game related subjects. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, please do consider subscribing. But if you're going to subscribe, don't forget to hit that bell notification button so that way you will be notified when I upload a video just like this. I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and I'll be seeing you guys next time.